everyone, welcome. My name's Laura Flusci. I'm the Executive Director of MODA, the Museum of Design Atlanta, and I want to thank you for being here this evening. Here at MODA, we define design as a creative process that inspires change, transforms lives, and makes the world a better place. And if there are two parts of that definition of design that matter the most to us, they are the idea of design as process, something that is taking place right now, and design as an agent of change, a way of addressing big challenges in the world. In 2021, we are sharing ways that designers can and are changing the world through programs like this one and through our exhibitions as well. We'll be talking and have been talking over the course of this year and well into next about design's power to help us combat climate change, about how design can help us create a just and equitable world, and the ways that we can use design to create a world that's welcoming and user-friendly for everybody. And there are several of those topics that bring us here tonight. Design, as we know, is a transformative power, but there are many people who don't benefit from its capacity to improve lives and to elevate human experience. That issue is compounded by the fact that many people are underrepresented in the design field. There are not enough people of color or people with disabilities or women in design fields. And for this reason and other reasons, those people receive too little attention from designers. And traditionally, design's been seen as a privilege for those who can afford it. And the transformative power of design itself hasn't been used to help those who need it the most. As a result, we have a world filled with objects and systems and buildings and cities and landscapes that don't meet everyone's needs. But it's in our power to change that. Those are things that we think a lot about at MODA. And they are issues that Ayoubi, who's here with us this evening, and the team at the Empowerment Plan, represented by Knill, are taking on in their work. And we're going to be hearing about that. So thank you for being here. I think this will be a really exciting conversation. The Empower coat, produced by the Empowerment Plan, and Ayoubi's Delta jacket are both on view in our current exhibition at MODA, which is called Survival Architecture and the Art of Resilience. And if you are in Atlanta or plan to be before January 16th, I invite you to come and see it. Come and see both those objects as well as many others. Aya and Lauren, thank you for being here. This evening has been organized by my colleague, Tiffany Ricks, who is MODA's Community Engagement Coordinator. And I'm gonna hand the microphone over to her and let her lead us through what I think will be a fascinating conversation. So thank you, Aya, thank you, Lauren, thank you, Tiffany, and thanks to everyone who's here.
Thank you. Happy to introduce our panel speakers tonight. Since graduating from Georgia Tech in the spring of 2021 with a bachelor's in industrial design, Ayoubi has been developing solutions to mitigate homelessness through what she calls humanitarian couture. The result of these explorations is the Delta jacket, a jacket that marries fashion and utility to provide the homeless with much needed heat and comfort in the form of an inflatable bedding. After receiving funding through awards like the Georgia Tech Inventure Prize and the Richard John Livingstone Martin Humanitarian Award, Ayoubi is well on her way to manufacturing and distributing the Delta jacket to those in need. One day, she hopes to deliver the jackets to the refugees in her home country of Jordan, who inspired this venture. Knill has spent a decade working in fund development for grassroots organizations in Detroit. As development and outreach coordinator, Lauren works to connect passionate donors with organizations and communities around the globe to help distribute the Empower Coat to those most in need. Since joining Empowerment Plan in early 2018, Lauren has helped distribute more than 26,000 coats across North America, Europe, and Asia. Welcome tonight, Ayoubi and Knill. I'll let Aya take it away.
Thank you. As both Laura and Tiffany have said, my name is Aya Ayoubi, and I'm a graduate from Tech. I'd love to touch on the topic of designing resilience, because I think that's exactly what we all need and we all need to learn about. And it's a journey that I've been through that's been very inspiring and will affect change at some point or another. But essentially, I hail from a small country named Jordan. It's deemed the Switzerland of the Middle East for being a safe haven to 2.9 million refugees. Did you guys know that the third largest city by population is actually a refugee camp? And that camp is called the Zaatari camp. I had the pleasure of attending that camp and interviewing some of its refugees or some of its residents a few summers ago as a research assistant. And that's where I truly learned the meaning of resilience, because these were a people that left their country or fled their country with only the clothes on their backs, and yet were able to thrive as a community together in makeshift tents and with makeshift jobs. So if you see that second image, you'll see that this man put together 2 bikes to make his own Uber sharing, ride sharing system in the camp, which is just a testament to how resilience is our way of adapting and our way of telling the world that we want change, and hopefully change for the better, because that's what we look to when we're trying to be resilient. Without it, then there is no purpose to sustaining all of these different problems and situations that we go through in life. But I wanted to solve the issue we had in our backyard in Georgia first. The segments of homeless or the unsheltered on the streets and the unsheltered in the refugee camp overlap in so many ways. But unlike the Zaatari refugee camp, the homeless don't really have a community to lean on and to create this survival economy based off of. And so how do you give those people, those vulnerable people, a design that isn't fake or gimmicky, a design that actually seeps into the roots of the issue and causes systemic change instead of just being a bandage cure-all? And how do you empower people through your design so that they could break their own cycle of poverty? And that's exactly what I aim to do with my industrial design degree. Some may think that this is a normal design process where you have very, let's say, cohesive expansions and contractions in an idea, but actually my process went a little bit more like this, a design squiggle, which still got me to the same place, but designing change is never just a straight route. And that's what I learned throughout this process. Now, after working with the homeless community in downtown Atlanta, I noticed that there was a dissonance between what they said and what they actually did. They lived like nomads, but they still carried all of their bedding. And through many cups of coffee and shared meals and just observations, you could tell that this is a vulnerable segment, almost invisible. A lot of people do feel uncomfortable around homelessness or even homeless parts of town, like parts of town where the homeless plague. And so I needed a product that would not only help give them the dignity they deserve, but also empower them to get out of this vicious cycle and to look good, feel good, let's say. And that's why I decided to marry fashion and function in the Delta jacket, because I noticed that need to carry your bedding, that need to hide your bedding under an underpass or somewhere where no one will find it, is one of their major needs. I know from experience that a good night's sleep will solve a lot of mental and physical heartbreak. So hopefully by the look good, feel good theory, you could motivate someone to get themselves out of their cycle and also open the topic of homelessness. But essentially, I got to work drawing a lot, but none of those ideas really stuck. They were still that gimmicky, cure-all, utilitarian. Oh, it's a multi-tool. It does everything. But really, when you're doing everything, you're not really solving anything. And so I knew that design needed to be durable. It needed to stand not only the test of time, but also the test of nature. And so I looked to nature and used biomimicry to inform my design decision. And biomimicry is basically leaning on nature and using that to, let's say, fulfill a certain function that nature can already do. And I chose to use the way that birds puff up when they're cold. So essentially what happens, if you've ever seen a bird in the wintertime, they puff their feathers up so that they have more surface area, and all the wind travels between their feathers, and that wind basically becomes trapped heat or trapped air. And air is one of the most permeable heat sources. And so I decided to make the Delta jacket inflatable. So how do you make a garment inflatable? You use all the different styles and techniques and thoughts that you get from air mattresses, from safety equipment, but you had to do all of that within garmentry and in the cut and sew industry. And honestly, if you think of plastic, it doesn't smell the same. You just can't encourage dignity and self-efficacy with a plastic, water resistant jacket. So I got to work on a few different designs, and after a few embarrassing mirror selfies, I had the idea for the inflation and where to put the pockets and how it's going to inflate, which I then turned into this. I did the research on what materials to use and came up with this patent pending, inflatable, and reversible garment. The Delta jacket can blow out for the homeless to sleep on at night. It also comes lined with an emergency foil fabric that keeps people warm in the winter but cold in the summer, because it reflects your heat inwards or outwards depending on how you wear the foil. It also has its own inflatable neck pillow, basically, that the homeless can use as a pillow, which is something that really sold a lot of the community that I've been talking to. But either way, it's just portable and very lightweight and easy to use, so you can just roll it up and put it in a bag when you're not using it. And that bag is made of the spare material from the jacket itself, which is great. But a design is nothing if not to be tested. And that testing will actually yield more information than making the design itself. Although the design required a new manufacturing process altogether, that felt cool to me, but I don't think the homeless would have cared how they got their jacket as long as they did. And so I took it back to the streets of downtown Atlanta and I tested it with more than 20 people before realizing how excited they were to get their hands on a jacket that utilitarian. It had all the different features that they thought they needed, which is really great. But they also enjoyed the fact that it was given to them, made for them specifically. Their pure excitement led me to submit the jacket to the Inventure Prize, and that was a whirlwind of an experience where I was able to create a business plan around this jacket, where for every jacket sold, one would be donated to a homeless person. And that business plan resonated with so many people because I got pre-orders from around the world just attempting to buy this jacket before the prize, which I think would have sold anyone. But again, that remotivated me to work on this project. It showed me how that personal touch of the one-to-one model shows that people are more willing to donate within their comfort zone, knowing what and where is going to go to whom, Whereas when you're approached at the street, you might not be comfortable donating money or giving food to someone. You might be late, you might not be carrying cash, all of the different problems that I've seen to do with homelessness after research with bystanders. But this map literally shows that people from around the world are willing to rally against or behind this idea and willing to donate their time, their money, and their effort with this very personal donation strategy. And so not only did I gain this really great exposure from the Inventure Prize by being exhibited in MODA and being featured in news articles and all of those different outlets that reeled in a little bit more pre-orders and more awareness, but the Delta jacket is now well on its way to being manufactured right here in Georgia too. I see right here, but I'm not there, but right there in Georgia too. But essentially, this jacket has so much more potential to grow into different fields, and not only the homeless. They are, of course, the segment that it was made for, in addition to the refugees back in my country and in any country in the world. But I've gotten emails and texts and been approached by campers, by fishermen, by government officials who all think that this technology, this designed resilience, this adaptable ecosystem could be used in all of these different fields. And that technology itself, that patent pending manufacturing process, can be an industry game changer. But all of this leads to awareness on the issue at hand and giving a voice back to those disenfranchised and invisible people that do need to be heard, because they're kind of forgotten in our day-to-day basis or day-to-day life before we actually see them on the street. And hopefully after this awareness, we could start to create some systemic change and get more people to speak on the behalf of this disenfranchised group. And that systemic change could come through policy changes, could come through just pure mentality changes between people, so that you don't treat someone different for being homeless. And that's exactly why I named the Delta jacket Delta, because Delta is the sign for change. It's a change in the weather conditions and environments that the homeless go through. It's a change in how the Delta jacket changes from a raincoat to bedding to a puffer jacket. It's also a change in the mentalities of people towards the homeless and the homeless towards themselves, which hopefully will affect even greater change and change for the better. My name is Ayoubi, and this is the Delta jacket. If you have any questions, please go ahead and ask.
Yeah. Thank you. We have some claps from the crowd. Thank you so much, Aya. I do have a question. I'll wait to see if others roll in. How did you arrive at the name Humanitarian Couture, and how does that speak to everything that you just, gave a deep dive into a moment ago?
Actually, I should have really touched on that. I wanna trademark that name, but essentially, this started as a studio project, and the overall title I gave the studio project was Humanitarian Couture, because it was kind of an enigma, giving a humanitarian issue the gravitas of couture and fast fashion and all the class and dignity that it needs. And so I thought the idea of look good, feel good really is more powerful than people think it is, because honestly, it does change your mood to have self-confidence. It does change your mood to an extent where you remember your self-worth. And I do think that anyone and everyone is dressed, and so they should be and could be dressed in whatever they want, however they want, as long as they feel good in it. So that's exactly what I designed the jacket to do. It's not only a jacket that opens, or it's a fashionable jacket that opens the subject up about homelessness, because when you see a homeless person in this jacket, I don't want you to assume they're homeless. I want you to know that, okay, they might be homeless, but they still look good, and they look good enough to get a job. They look good enough to use that jacket that should be durable for 5+ years, but also it could be not only their home, but a fashionable home too.
Absolutely. We have another question. How did the Inventure Prize at Georgia Tech further your project, Aya?
So the Inventure Prize was really a lot. I thought I was going into just a student prize, but it was much more than that. It's apparently Georgia Tech likes to market it as American Idol for nerds. And so, like anyone who graduates from American Idol, you get a lot more of exposure. You need to know a lot about the product you're making and the business that you're about to be creating. And after seeing how many people got excited about the product itself, I decided to create a business around it. And obviously the homeless can't raise money for this jacket themselves. And so that's why I had to create a business plan to get this in the hands of as many people who need it. And the Inventure Prize just helped me have that holistic worldview, I want to say, because as philanthropic and interesting as the idea is, the world is very concerned about money and how to run a business and how to keep the business alive so that you could keep your idea alive. And I think that's what the Inventure Prize helped me do. It put me in contact with a lot of great people who've helped me from manufacturing to supply chain to actually donating the jackets back to Jordan full circle. So that's,
Wow.
Yeah, it's been amazing.
Wow, that's awesome to know that your jacket actually made it to Jordan in the end, full circle. So we have a question from
next year.
Will. Oh, next year.
But-
Okay, awesome.
Yes.
Susan has a question for you. Do you know what the final materials of the jacket are? Waterproof but lightweight and warm. What materials can do all of those things?
So the material I'm using right now is called TPU coated ripstop. It's the same material that's used in lightweight boats, and it's literally ripstop. So it's the same material used for tent fabric, North Face coats, all of those things. But the way I manufacture it changes it from just a normal patterned material to an inflatable jacket. And so the inflation aspect is what gives it the heat that it needs, in addition to the foil fabric lining. And as I said before, like the air is a very good conductor of heat and electricity, let's say. So once you wear the jacket, you immediately feel how hot it is because of that extra puffer style. And what's included in my patent is the fact that air can mitigate the use for fur, could you mitigate the use of stuffing, and that's just a game changer later on if anyone wants to use that. So it's just as effective and still durable because it's the same material used in boats, which are under constant stress, strain, and water.
Fantastic. What software were you using, Aya, to pull this all together? Were you using anything in particular? Or?
For the manufacturing, no software up until now. Mass manufacturing has a different type of software, but that's just the cut and sew industry. They use a lot of automated systems, and they basically lay out things depending on the manufacturer. They lay out things in AutoCAD to laser cut them and then cut and sew and stick them all together. But for me, I didn't really need to depend on software. I created the jacket using heat welding. And so it required more labor intensive processes than let's say digital ones.
And Susan also wants to know, is the closure a big zipper?
So it's a zipper and some buttons. The one at MODA is a primary prototype, so it doesn't include the buttons or the pockets yet, which is pretty sad. But it does have all of those different types of fasteners because I needed to make it not only waterproof to the fullest extent, but also easy to navigate so that people can sleep on it at night, put it on very quickly, take it off very quickly, and so on.
Wonderful. We have a question, Aya, from Rob. Did your need finding lead to other insights that could lead to other related products or ways to use the technologies you've developed in additional ways?
That's a great question. I definitely, every time you do need finding, you find out more and more things that you didn't listen to before, didn't notice before, didn't give gravitas to before, or like went like, I noticed that last time, but it seems very important and no one's noticed it before. So not only did those lead to different features in my product, like let's say after having the homeless test the jacket, I realized that a 40, 50-year-old man isn't going to have the stamina to deflate and inflate this jacket every single day. Or at least the men that I've been speaking to. They found it hard and they liked the idea, but they would have said that, no, we'll just keep it inflated and then carry it around, which defeats the purpose of it being portable. And so the next version of the jacket had the same technologies that are used in inflatable life vests. So some of them came with like different types of nozzles that have more air intake, and then others came with just a little pump, and then the third version came with an electric pump. And all of these are being tested in the next model that's going to go in production. So all three of those things had to be incorporated into the design at some point and in some different ways. But I think not only has it expanded the variability of uses of the jacket, but also all the things I could add to the patent. So it's been interesting.
Fantastic. Laura would like to know, how will the Delta jacket be rolled out once it's in production?
So at first I thought that I wouldn't get any pre-orders, and so I'd roll them out myself. I just go out and do it. But I've received over 1,000 pre-orders right now on the website, so I can't find 1,000 people and make sure they're not let's say selling the jacket or doing all of that stuff, because there's just a certain series of things you have to do when you sell someone something and then donate something. And so I came into contact with Matt Connolly, the CEO of Good 360. They're basically the FedEx of all donated goods. And he is willing to help me with the supply chain of donating all of these jackets to organizations like the Red Cross, who've already accepted the first order of jackets, and organizations like USAID in Jordan, who helped the UNHCR in the refugee camp, the Zatari refugee camp. So that's just one really big cure-all in my supply chain process. And I'm glad I stumbled upon him through my professors at Georgia Tech and through CreateX, the program that the Inventure Prize led me to, because that just made all of that make sense, let's say. So that's how the jackets are going to be rolled out through Good 360.
Thank you so much, Aya. For anyone that has additional questions, we'll save them for after Lauren's presentation. We're excited to bring Laura to the front, and thank you, Aya. We'll bring you both together in a moment. Hello, Lauren.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm going to give me one moment to share my screen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, actually, if Aya could stop sharing her screen.
Yes, yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you
Good luck.
Too far back. Sorry, guys. That's better. Hi, I'm Lauren. I'm the Development and Outreach Manager for the Empowerment Plan based on the east side of Detroit. I'm going to start with a little video that'll give you a good background into who we are.
When seemingly impossible challenges strike, landing people in the most unexpected of places, Empowerment Plan is there to help give people their power back. Over the course of a 2-year period, Empowerment Plan trains homeless parents to make the Empower coat, a coat for the homeless that transforms into a sleeping bag. But that's not all Empowerment Plan does. While 60% of the work week is making coats, the other 40% of paid time is spent on supportive services like driver's ed, GED tutoring, building healthy habits, getting into permanent housing, and preparing for the next chapter, along with career development. Empowerment Plan aims to create long-term empowerment by breaking the cycle of poverty with the coats they make and the jobs they create.
That's just a little background on who we are. I think as I go into the history of Empowerment Plan, you're going to find a lot of parallels to Aya's story of how we got started and really the goal and the mission of what we're doing. But our mission is to end the generational cycle of poverty and homelessness through employment and through the production of a coat that we make and distribute globally to those in need. This is Veronica Scott. She is our founder and CEO. 10 years ago, Veronica was a college student. She was an industrial design student at the College for Creative Studies here in Detroit. And she had no interest in fashion. She had internships working for a toy company and other sorts of things. But she had a class, and the project for the entire semester was to create a product that fills a need in your community. At the time, the College for Creative Studies in Detroit is in the Midtown section. It's just streets over from the Cass Corridor, which is where we see the highest population of homeless individuals. That's where a lot of shelters are. And it was something that was also very close to her personally. She had grown up in a situation with parents who struggled with unemployment, evictions, mental health disorders, and addictions. She talks about how when she was young, everything she owned fit into a bag, and she had to be able to take it with her at a moment's notice. So something that was so personal to her, she really chose homelessness. And the idea actually started as maybe a coat that would turn into a tent. And as she did her research and spent time, it evolved into the coat we know now. I'm just going to glance over this. Too far. Some of the awards that Veronica has won, but I want to draw your attention to some of the photos actually, which highlight some of the different iterations that this coat has taken throughout Veronica's design process. I also, because I'm talking to a group of Georgians, note that when Veronica won the New Frontier Award in 2012, she won it alongside of Stacey Abrams. So this is our coat as we know it and love it now. Veronica, as I said, spent hundreds of hours working with end users in shelters here in Detroit. And what she found happened, kind of two things towards the end of the project happened at the same time. The users and the individuals she was working with created their own wait list for the coat. Veronica had no intention of creating more than one coat for the project, but people were creating their wait list for the next coats that come out down the line. But also a woman approached her and quite angrily said, "This coat doesn't matter. I don't need a coat. What I need is a job." And that is what I call her, her Oprah aha moment, that light bulb moment where you see, I have a product that can fill two needs in our community, both employment and giving a coat and dignity to those who need it. So she started January 2012. It was her and 3 women who lived in a local shelter, and they were in what was essentially a old utility closet crammed in there, and they were able to produce and distribute 1,000 coats that first year, which is really incredible when you think about the time and the space it takes to get something off the ground. That first coat, the first iterations of the coat, Veronica didn't even know how to sew. So she had to learn how to sew from her mother to make this coat. They were made out of old wool jackets, vinyl from old billboards, old fencing. She really wanted to make something that was sustainable and recycling and using old products to get this going. That's not where we are today. Her first coat took about 90 hours to make and weighed over 25 pounds. You can't walk around, let alone stand up if you were wearing a coat that is 25 pounds. But it was a jumping off point. The coat you see today weighs just under 5 pounds and takes in a vacuum about 90 minutes to make. So our production and materials, we really try and focus on sustainably sourced materials. I think we all know the fashion industry is probably the most wasteful industry there is. And companies like Patagonia and North Face will often burn factories full of fabric that they can't use because it's a proprietary item. But we fall into a nice little loophole of being a nonprofit, and they could donate it to us. So we get some of our materials are donated. Some of our materials are seconds or leftovers, things that they cannot sell. And we try to make it as sustainable as possible. The liner has been donated from everything from the old, and I'm going to get this wrong, the interior liner from a Chevy Volt came from GM. At one point, we had recycled plastic bottles that were coming out of Flint and the Flint water crisis. And even a company in Atlanta donated some of their liner refrigerate. And that was some of our warmest materials we'd ever had. We also use heavy duty Velcro and buckles. And that was a conscious decision on Veronica's part because zippers break, buttons fall off. And you're looking for something that can last as long as possible for somebody when they're out in the elements and things are used roughly. So we found that the Velcro also allows for shape and tightness. So if somebody needs a little more room, that Velcro actually gives them a little more wiggle room than sometimes traditional materials do. We are set up right now in a traditional manufacturing model. So it's not one person making one full coat. We have 12 stations to make up one line, and they can produce about 50 coats in one day. And as I said, the coat now weighs just under 5 pounds and can be produced in about 90 minutes, but that's kind of the vacuum if nothing else is happening. We also partner with local outreach organizations, local governments, and we have piloted programs where we have a resource guide on the inside of the coat that people can use. It also functions as a pocket, so there's a place for people to put personal items as well, but it also lists anything emergency, transportation, mental health, local hospitals, and other shelters that may be needed. This is just a recent recap of what we were able to do. Even through COVID, we have found that the demand for our coat has grown exponentially, and we are at a point where demand has outpaced what we can even supply. So last year, we distributed close to 10,000 coats. This is a photo of 2 individuals in Chicago during a handout we did there, in 41 states and 2 countries. And this is a list of just some of the nonprofit organizations and grassroots organizations that we work with to distribute our coats to. This is just a quote from one of our recent distribution partners and a distribution we did in Grand Rapids this past winter. So our coat sponsorship model, we are not a retail organization, we are a nonprofit. So we operate in a sponsorship model that somebody can donate the cost of a coat and then we will donate it. So you can directly sponsor for someone you sponsor the coat, we will send it to you. And you give that to someone whether it's your brother who's going to be evicted, somebody you see on your way to work, that coat comes to you and you can give that to a person personally. We also have people who start fundraisers and fundraise for their church, their outreach organization, whatever it might be, so they can get a bulk order and make more of an impact in their community. We also have an option that people can just sponsor a coat. If you don't know somebody, if you don't see somebody, if you don't know how you would go out and hand out a coat, you can sponsor a coat. And there are organizations all over the world. There are individuals all over the world that reach out to us in need of a coat, but they can't afford to do it themselves. So we have what we call the EP Coat Fund, and we use from that bucket of money to donate and distribute coats all over the world. And then finally, we have some really great corporate and community partnerships where corporate organizations will partner with local shelters or outreach organizations to distribute a large number of coats to really make an impact in their community. This is just some of our recent major sponsors who have done just that to make impact in their local community, or someone like Spreetail who chose 10 different cities across the country to make an impact with. This is Toya. Toya is a graduate of our program, and I think she's the perfect person to sort of transition from the coat into the business model of what we do. Toya here talks about driving through Detroit and seeing somebody wearing her coat and the pride of saying, I made that coat, but also knowing that she was in that same place at one point, and that the hope that comes with that coat. We even have an organization, and they include a little card when they hand out their coats that says, this coat was made by somebody who's experienced exactly what you're going through, and there's still hope. This is not the end. Homelessness is not a defining characteristic. It is something you are experiencing at this moment. And sometimes people get into a mindset, and we find it with our employees, that is the defining characteristic about who they are. And you have to remind them that there's so much more to you than just this tiny moment. And Aya even talked about, how people are uncomfortable with homelessness and don't know how to donate, don't know how to interact with it. And I think it comes from that place of, we are all, one major life event away from experiencing something very similar, and identifying that and coming up face to face with that can be very difficult for people. But that's the great thing about the Empower Coat is we're trying to give hope, we're trying to give dignity, just like I talked about. So our model, when Veronica started this, she wasn't just making a coat, she was trying to employ people. And in the very beginning, she looked at it as permanent employment. Like, this was her promise to those that she employed. I'm giving you a job for as long as Empowerment Plan is open. But what naturally started to happen was people started to, find their own way, as they got stabilized, they found their own way out, and they were ready to graduate on their own. And they wanted to give their seat to somebody else who needed it more. So slowly this program sort of evolved into where, okay, what else can we do to help you? What do you need? And so we took feedback from our employees and developed the 60-40 model, where you are paid full-time, 40 hours a week from the moment you start with us. You don't need to know anything about sewing. We're going to teach you everything you need to know. And we're not telling you you're going to be an industrial sewer for the rest of your life. You are an industrial sewer for the next 2 years. And what is your goal? What do you want to do next? We're going to help you get there. So 60% of your paid time, yes, is sitting at a sewing machine, making pockets, sewing in liner, finishing the coat. But the other 40% of your paid time is in supportive programming. And that means everything from GED classes to driver's training. In a city like Detroit, to have a job, you need a car. Helping with unpaid parking tickets. If you need time to go to any sort of government social service office, they are only, they hold banker's hours. So any other job, you have to be working, or you have to sacrifice your time at the job to go get the services. So we are paying people to seek out those services and get what they need. You hear a lot of times when people talk about homelessness that get a job. That's all you need is a job. And it is so much more than just a job. You have to look at the whole person. It's not just one thing that causes you to become homelessness. It's usually a compounding factor of lots of things. And that's the same that's going to help raise you up and raise you and your family out of poverty. So we're looking at that whole person. Now, we don't have a cookie cutter model. Every single person who comes in the door has a different story of why they got to where they are. And so every person's journey is going to be different. But these are the key steps we see when we find success. It's the first thing we try and do is get you out of the shelter and into stable housing. That's the most important. Okay, and once that's taken, what's next? Is it childcare? Do you have legal issues? What it is? And help taking each of these steps along with you to get you to a place where now you're ready to look at your journey and what do you want to be? And we've had people go into nursing, customer service, people who are industrial sewers. We've had women become welders. Whatever your end journey might be, we're going to help you try and get there and help you get placed in a career that is middle income and middle skill. And this is Autumn. Autumn is a graduate. She's at Roush Industries. She is a seamstress. I want to go back to Toya, who you saw before, is now working for Ford Motor Company. So she is successfully placed as well. But Autumn's talking about how much, Empowerment Plan gave her and the skills, not just to do a job, but to advance and support herself and her family. A lot of what Veronica looked at when she started was the impact can be made by raising a single parent out of homelessness and poverty, and the ripple effect that can have on your children and your family moving forward. We saw families that nobody had graduated high school to now they're in one generation, they make that leap from going from nobody graduating high school to somebody graduating college and having a full-time stable permanent job at a major company in Detroit. That's the type of growth that you don't usually see. It usually takes generations to escape that cycle. You'll talk to people who work in shelters that you will see generations of the same family coming through the shelter because it's so hard to escape that cycle. You're staying at a shelter, but you want to get a job, but a job doesn't like to see that you're living in a shelter. So if you're trying to get a house to get out of the shelter, you have to have a stable job. So it's especially, you can't do both while you're still living in the shelter because of all the stigma that is attached. So we do our best to really be that stepping stone out of poverty and to help people take those next steps in their lives. So next year's our 10th anniversary. It's incredible. So since 2012, we've created 95 jobs. We've impacted over 275 children. 100% of our graduates and employees have become stably housed within 90 days of starting employment. And we've distributed 55,000 coats around the globe. Getting my numbers right. All 50 states, 11 Canadian provinces and territories, and 20 countries on 6 continents. And by the end of March, which is the end of our coat season, obviously, we expect to surpass the 65,000 coat goal. So looking forward towards our future, COVID really threw us for a loop. I'm sure like it did everybody else. And so I think where we saw ourselves 2 years ago is different than where we are today. Lots of questions about whether we want to expand and franchise out and take the coat to other, locations and start other warehouses. If we want to do more of a model where we go in and teach communities how to build a similar model and do that. But there's lots of options once we've come out of COVID. So any questions?
Thank you so much. Awesome. Thank you, Lauren and Aya. Wonderful presentations. We have a couple of questions. I think you touched on one that came in around the time you were talking about the model into the workforce. So I think I'll follow with Rob's question. Amazing model. In terms of cutting and sewing, how much technical training is needed to be able to work on that production line? How quickly can someone be trained? And how do you think about expanding that labor force?
So stuff like cut and sew, our coat is, we don't say our coat is waterproof. We say it is water resistant because we don't seal our seams. We don't have that equipment on site. We've looked at getting, a laser cutter on site. That's a big table. And grading that skills, but it's, again, not something we've done. So we outsource our cutting of materials, but once on site and the materials are on site, we teach everybody from word go. They don't need to know anything. And it takes about 90 days for a person to learn how to sew all the pieces of a coat and be ready to reach the floor. I forgot when I was talking, I got so distracted. I have a coat here. If we want to talk about the coat, if you want me to stand up and give you a demo of the coat, I can do that as well.
Yeah, we can definitely take a second.
Yeah.
As long as you like. Yeah.
So one thing, and Aya touched on it, is dignity. So Veronica never wanted to create like one color coat. There's no logos or labels because it's not a billboard. You're not somebody walking down the street so you can quickly identify that's a person who is homeless. This is a brand new coat. A lot of people who are living in shelters, even if they're not unhoused, the clothing they receive is, hand-me-downs, second, third hand-me-downs. They're held together by duct tape and bungee cords. So dignity is something that is clean, it is new, and it has only ever been worn by you. So we sometimes, because we get seconds fabric, because we get donations of fabric, we get like cool colors like the camo, which is like my favorite. This is my favorite demo coat. So we have heavy duty buckles that show you that way. I should show you this before I have to wrap it back up. because I know I'm not going to roll it up. But so when rolled up, it goes over your shoulder and it can go over your body. But it unclicks here and right here. And this is even an older model that I have. So we take feedback from end users, organization, even our seamstresses come to us with feedback as to how to improve the coat. So this is an older model. Our newer models have a cinch so you can tighten it even further. We find a lot of people put their personal items inside the coat to carry with them. So here's the coat. It's a one size fits most. We found in distributions, you usually only get one chance to hand somebody that coat. There's not really an opportunity to like, I'll come back tomorrow with another size. So we found larges and up, you know, you couldn't get rid of small sizes. It was the larger sizes. So this is a one size fits most. I say comfortably a women's medium to a men's 2X. I've had linebackers come into our facility and try it on and it fits them. So it's a pretty generous sizing. So heavy duty Velcro all the way down the coat and inside.
Hey, Laura, Laura, do you mind if we unshare the screen so we can make you the main screen? Yeah, it's totally fine. We've been watching closely, but.
Have you been watching closely? Just a tiny little thumbnail of me? I am so sorry. All right, totally fine. A little bit better.
Thank you.
Thank you. The heavy duty Velcro, that opens up to the coat. And inside is the foot bag. So you can wear it just like this with that tucked up inside of you. But it also means that while you're wearing it, it's pretty easy while you're still wearing the coat to flip down the foot bag, which I'm going to try and lift up for you all to see, which is right here. It also detaches and can become its own bag for carrying. What's really nice, we have found in dealing specifically with disabled veterans, that this foot bag is really great for those who are in wheelchairs, that it can be taken off and used to pull over their feet and legs. So there's the coat. It rolls back up. I say it rolls back up similar to an actual sleeping bag. You kind of start from the bottom and burp it out, and the arms act as the straps. So I apologize for not.
Totally fine. We were watching very
you see the whole thing.
closely.
There's videos on YouTube as well. You can Google to see more of our coat.
Absolutely. In person. Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lauren. We have another question for you. And does the employment plan aspire to grow substantially? And what would that take besides labor?
You know, I think there's always the talk of growth. Right now, coming out of COVID, our goal is to stabilize our employees, making sure all of our current employees feel that, you know, coming out of this crisis, that they feel stabilized, and that we ourselves, you know, we're going through supply chain just like every other company. You know, 1 month it's buckles, the next it's, you know, liner or it's shell. As something's always out of order and it's hard to come through. So we're trying to just get through these next couple months of just unstabilizing before we look. Like I said, I think there's a lot of different ways forward. And as we're approaching our 10th anniversary, Veronica and her leadership team and our board is trying to be very intentional about what those next steps are, because there are lots of options. And there is a need for this model, whether it's not making more of these coats or making a lighter weather coat, making a coat for children, you know, who are also in poverty and don't get their own coat. That's an option. We're trying to be very intentional about those next big steps we make.
Ngodu has a question for Lauren. Have you ever had to turn anyone away from the program or remove someone from the program? Has there ever been a case where someone wasn't a good fit for the program?
So we are very intentional. Our HR team takes a lot of time to interview everybody who is approaching us for a job. So we have relationships with all the shelters here in Detroit, and we'll start a hiring cycle by just doing open houses so people can get to know who we are and what we do. Because we're not made for everybody. Coming into this, you have to be ready for a full 40-hour-a-week job. And then we do multiple rounds of interviews, both on site where you are and pre-COVID coming on to our site. So you can really see what happens and you can meet all the people. You're not just meeting the HR manager, you're meeting the case managers, you're meeting the director of programs. A lot of times you also get to meet Veronica. So you get to meet the CEO, you get to meet fellow seamstresses to see what's ready. Of course, things happen, life situations happen, and people do have to transition out. We do our best to stay in touch with everybody who transitions out and try to give them as much support for those next steps in their lives. Some people find jobs a lot quicker. You know, we say ideally this is a 2-year model, you know, 24 months to 30 months with those 30 days at the beginning of training or 90 days at the beginning of training and 90 days at the end, but also doing a year past of extra supportive services. So if anything happens, any, you know, unexpected bills, any big life situations happen, you can come back to us and really help. We will give you help in those situations.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren. That was phenomenal, both presentations. Aya, we have another question for you. So I think it's a good time to bring you both forward for questions from the audience. Additional questions. Aya Ngodu would also like to know, for the actual planning of the jacket, I think it goes back to the software question. Did you just go straight from sketching directly into 3D modeling, or did you go straight from sketching into manufacturing?
So essentially, I knew nothing about the cut and sew industry or fashion or how to make a jacket. And so it went from sketching, and it had to be like fashion sketching also. So I had to teach myself fashion sketching and then teach myself how to make a jacket, because CAD won't help you with the patterning issue. So a pattern is basically all the different, let's say, stencils of how each piece of the jacket is going to be sewn together and how they're going to make up a certain jacket. So I had to teach myself how to pattern for that physical jacket that I wanted to create. And after looking at YouTube videos, downloading stencils online, downloading patterns online, I tailored each one to what I wanted to see and went straight into the plastic bags. So I made my own patterns, like my own cardboard cutouts that I used to trace and then cut into plastic bags. And then I went straight into prototyping. So that prototype was very rudimentary, minimum viable product style. So it basically proved that the concept could work in theory. And from there, I took that pattern and started manufacturing directly. It was only until the patent and the Inventure Prize and all of these different marketing sources that I needed to CAD my model, that I needed to create a tech pack for manufacturing, and I needed to create somewhat of a storyboard of how to put the jacket together, IKEA style, basically, for the patent. So it really was a design squiggle. Maybe Lauren can talk a little bit more about how Veronica did her process, because I feel like it might have been more professional. My timeline was also really ramped up because I had to do it for a studio class. So it was a lot of fake it till you make it. And then in the end, when I sewed it all together, it did look exactly the way I wanted it to, because in the end, as long as it fits well, it's sewn very, very cleanly, and it actually looks the way you sketched it out or designed it to look, then I think it's done its job. As of now, there have been multiple phases, so the pattern has gone through multiple rounds, and even the seams. So essentially, the jacket doesn't actually have sewn seams in the middle like any other type of jacket with stuffing. The seams themselves had to be reworked for ergonomics, for how people use it, and how it's going to inflate. So at some point, let's say there were seams, there weren't seams right over here, so the jacket would puff up really big at the chest. And so I had to add seams there so that it would look like an actual jacket. And if you look at your own jackets, they don't really have seams going down the middle right here. Like they have these, but not these. So it's just been a lot of iteration. But for fashion, CADing, I want to say, is more aesthetic than functional, just because the CAD is not done in the same way that you make the garment itself. Because the garment is actually flat before it becomes 3D.
Lauren, did you have some insight on EMPWR Coat's design process and going from software to production?
Yeah, I can give you my best summation. I only started about 4 years ago with Empowerment Plan, so everything I know is hearsay. But I mean, it's very similar. This was a semester-long project for Veronica. She, it was expedited. She had to learn how to sew. She had to learn about patterns, and it had to go through several iterations. And then even past the end of the project, that coat she presented as her project is not the coat you see today. And the coat that even came out, couple years ago was different than this coat. You can't be married to the design. You have to, especially when you're producing something that is meant for good, you have to take the person who's receiving that into mind and take that feedback. And we get it all the time. We used to have a more open hood. Now it's a very tight hood that is close to your face because it acts as a hat and a scarf at the same time to protect your face. Our pockets have gotten deeper and bigger so that you can put more stuff in them. Pre-COVID, we were piloting even more changes that had to be put on hold. But, looking and watching what people do with our coat, because they do, and they make their own changes to make it fit their lives, which is totally reasonable and acceptable. But we're watching what they're doing and go, maybe we should do that in the manufacturing process so people don't have to do that when they get it out on the street. So always trying to evolve and change and use the feedback and resources of the people who come to you.
Yeah, like making a coat is very personal and human because we all use them. But when you're using them day in and day out, you really do need to think of the person who's using them, just because it becomes their ecosystem. You need it. Like for my jacket, at first the pockets were sideways, but now they're up and down because that's how things will fit. And like obviously there are pockets everywhere in different orientations according to how you use it. Or like for the inflation aspect, it's changed in terms of where we put the valves, just because it's easier for most people to inflate it a certain way, logically or just directly, instead of looking for it and figuring out how to do it. So I want to say need finding and customer discovery is an ongoing process, especially the more you, like, obviously I haven't distributed 10,000 jackets, or 55,000 jackets, that's an amazing thing. And you can get so much data, so much insight about that, especially when you have a whole production and a lot of people who help you. When I was developing the tech pack as I am developing the tech pack for the jacket, a lot of the seamstresses were like, okay, this would be so much more stable and so much more durable if you put the seams here and here instead of there and there. All of these different things, you need to take them all in. And again, like my jacket is still a jacket, but once it was marketed to VPs and venture capitalist firms and all of these different people who don't really care about fashion but care about money and everything, they want to change how the jacket looks. So there's also, you can go really wide within what you want to change or really deep within what you want to change. So you can change it into a crop jacket or any other sort of jacket that you want to do to serve a different function. But yeah, that was a long-winded way to say that, like Lauren said, you shouldn't be married to the design.
Absolutely. When it's human-centered, it can always be an iterative process. So also to follow with that, we found it very interesting that both of these jackets come out of university setting, design studios. So do either of you think that there's a space for more real world problem solving in colleges and universities? Yeah.
Aya, you're closer to being in college. I'll let you go first.
So I want to say college students do get a lot of great ideas, and they're often facilitated by great professors and great courses. I was given the chance to work on this project because we were given an open-ended like thesis semester, let's say. And since I had such an attachment to the refugee crisis in Jordan, I thought that would be a great way to develop a product. At that point, I didn't know that it was going to be a piece of humanitarian couture or fashion or a garment in general. I just thought I wanted to tackle something towards that issue. The one thing I'd say about a school setting is that when it's a little bit daunting to have that open-ended statement. And so definitely a lot of people will get very philanthropic ideas, and many students are that like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed philanthropic type of thinker. But the design process is also unyielding. So unless you have that like determination to go out and do your own research and create your own everything from A to Z, a lot of ideas get faulty around along the way. So I mean, it's definitely a space where a lot of innovation happens. Like there's the tent to coat or tent to jacket by I'm sorry, I forgot her name, but it's almost the same. It's a survivalist coat for the homeless, which turns from like a poncho style coat to a tent. And it is made, I really forgot her name, but she is also a student. She also did that as her fashion design degree from either College of Creative Arts or SCAD or Pratt or Parsons, one of those design schools. But I do want to say it's a great space for anyone who wants to go into it, as long as they know what they're doing and getting into.
Thank you so much. Did you have anything to add to that, Nolan, before we?
I think there's just using the word empowerment, an empowerment piece. I think when you're young, you can easily be discouraged that you don't get a voice or you don't get a seat at the table because you haven't had enough experience. But obviously, all of these women have had the right ideas and the right tenacity to go after and do it. And so just remembering that even if you feel you're too close to the problem itself, if you are homeless yourself or you've experienced it, doesn't mean you can't be a key part in the solution.
Yes.
Thank you both so much. Is there a way that we can get in contact with you on LinkedIn or from your websites? Beyond that, are there any other links that you'd like to share? I'm going to drop them in the chat now. The best way to follow.
Email is always the best way to get a hold of me. It's lauren@empowermentplan.org. You can find me on LinkedIn. I have a pretty unique name, so there's not a lot of me out there on LinkedIn. So, I've also had people come through my Instagram box, somehow connecting me and asking for a coat through Instagram. So
I want to say I answer my email first, just because it's the least crowded. But you can find me at aya@ayoubi.com. So that's my first name at my last name.com. Or just go into deltajacket.com and find me through that email. Either way, I'm on Instagram, on Facebook, on all different types of social media, and I am the founder, CEO, marketer, everything of the Delta Jacket. So anything you send the Delta Jacket will come to me. So
thank you so much. And Lauren, they can also go to empowermentplan.com to donate a coat.
yeah, you can find all the information about our coat, ways to sponsor, ways to get involved and sponsor our ladies and our employment model as well.
Yes, awesome. And also, is there a way that we can support your work? The best way to support? Anything you'd like to share before we go?
You know, I would say right now we're actually in an incredible position of we have sponsored all of our coats that are going to be produced through the end of March. So looking for support for employment, you know, our employees are going to continue producing these coats to fulfill these orders. So we always have donations available to support supportive services and everything that supports our employees. So that's what we're looking at right now. But you know, you can always reach out to me, and we're talking about next winter, and it's not even winter 2021 yet. So
Absolutely. Thank you both so much for joining us this evening. Thank you for all of our attendees tonight for joining us and taking time out of your evening to join Design for Resilience. We'll make sure this recording is available for you later to rewatch. And if you have further questions for everyone, you can definitely reach out to Lauren and Aya with your follow-ups. All right.
Thank you so much for
Laura?
having us. It's been a
Yeah,
thank you.
great,
It was so
absolutely.
nice to meet you all.
It was
Thank you,
great.
Aya.
Yes, awesome. Thank you so
very
much.
nice to meet you all.